Back live inside Studio 10, Holley, Sinn, Jerome, Ritchey, and back in the days before television, radio was, of course, the main source of entertainment. It became the focal point every night as short fiction, adventure, and comedies were read by actors in a studio and broadcast live. That's how they did it.
That is how they did it. Well, the East Coast Golden Age Theater is recreating that form of entertainment on stage. And joining us today to explain is producer and performer Joanie Sigal. And this is just the coolest thing to me because it's sort of a melding of mediums. You know, folks are able now to see what goes on behind the scenes or what went on behind the scenes of a radio show.
Exactly. Because in the 1930s, what we're doing is we're doing stories that L. Ron Hubbard wrote in the 1930s. They're all fiction stories. And at that time, you had two major forms of entertainment. You either read books or you listened to the radio. Mm-hmm. And so oftentimes they took these stories and they read them on the radio. And so that's what we're doing, except people can see us. So we have costumes, a little bit of action.
Well, that's how old-time radio was done. A lot of, there was a live audience there.
Yeah, a lot of times.
And I know even the woman who played Baby Snooks, even though it was radio, she made a point of coming out in costume.
Yes.
And in character. So they were obviously broadcasting for the mass medium, but they were playing up to the audience that was right there in the theater.
Exactly. And we have an audience and they love it. We do a little bit of action in front of the stands.
Do you have a sound effects person?
We do.
Oh, man.
Oh, that's my favorite part. Yeah. I love the way that sound effects were created because back in the day, I mean, it was, and maybe this is how you all are doing it as well, you had to get really creative.
Well, ours are digital.
No.
Ours are digital.
Have the coconut shells for the horse hooves?
No, ours are actually digital and they're run on a computer, and so the guns shoot when they're supposed to shoot and that type of thing.
No, not to stereotype, but I would think the seniors would get a big kick out of this. It takes them back to when they were little kids. But what do a lot of little kids come to see this show? What do they think about it?
Well, actually,
who's the audience, basically?
Pretty much anybody, because we've done a couple of these performances for kids, high school kids and also younger kids, and they can really relate. Mm-hmm. The good guys are very obviously good guys. The bad guys are very obviously bad guys. I will say that the good guys always win. The guy always gets the girl, and the kids love it. They really love it.
You know what this harkens back to for me is being in school when storytellers would come to visit, and they don't do that very frequently anymore. And I think sometimes just to hear a story spoken out loud, it has a lot of impact because you're forced to use your imagination.
Exactly. And it also promotes reading. That's one of the reasons we're going into schools, because these stories are perfect for middle school and high school students. And let's face it, if we can get the students to read more, they're going to improve their literacy rate, and we all know that needs to happen.
Now, you've been a performer, I know, for a long time, but if you could have done this full-time back in the day, I mean, what a great job, right?
Absolutely.
Because they didn't have to memorize any lines.
No.
It's all right there, and you just run through it, and what a cake job,
It's wonderful. It's really wonderful. We're having a great time doing it.
Well, we want to give everybody a taste of what you'll see, but first, before we do that, here's the information that you need to see the show. The upcoming performances of the East Coast Golden Age Theater are Saturday, 7 to 8:30 at the Fort Harrison Hotel in Clearwater. Admission is $10, and there'll be music and dancing and refreshments, and of course, some good old stories to go with it. You can call the number on your screen to get more information. But before we say goodbye to Joanie, here are the East Coast Golden Age Theater.
Jigsaw Gilhooly was a sober-faced, gangling, walking stick of a puncher without any sense of humor. Right now, he was wondering just how to get around to fixing life so that he could ask Mary Ann to be his forevermore. He had 300 acres of his own and a square mile of range rented. Several gentlemen had lately offered him a fancy price, and he thought maybe he ought to sell and get another place before he asked Mary Ann. And that was not all. These gentlemen were sheepmen. If sheep got a foothold on the Painted Buttes range, there wouldn't be any stopping them.
Stop it!
Gilhooly looked at her in astonishment.
Stop looking like a shorthorn. Jigs Gilhooly, sometimes I think you were a fool, and at other times I'm certain of it.
Ma'am?
Said the startled Gilhooly.
Why don't you be a man?
Demanded Mary Ann, blue eyes flashing.
Now you're mad. I didn't mean to do anything. What's wrong?
She sat up like a cottontail and looked earnestly at him. In her hands was her copy of the book Ivanhoe.
The trouble with you, Jigs Gilhooly, is that you're not romantic.
Me?
You.
But...
He stopped, baffled.
What do you mean romantic?
Like Brian Dubois Gilbert? Or Ivanhoe?
Like who? Nobody by them names has a spread around here. Probably foreigners.
Foreigners are not Jigs Gilhooly. If you ever expect me to pay any attention to any offer you might have to make, you'll have to mend your ways. And that's final.
You mean be romantic? But gee, Marianne, I don't know anything about it.
An inspiration hit her. She closed the book with a thump and handed it to him.
When you've read this, you can come and see me again. And not until